What if everything you've been told about building wealth is backwards? Here's the shocking truth. Most Americans are drowning in fake assets that look like wealth but are actually financial quicksand. You think you're building a solid financial foundation, but you're actually constructing your own poverty prison. Look, I used to fall for this too. I had a big house, nice cars, and what looked like a successful portfolio. On paper, I seemed wealthy, but when I calculated the real numbers, the monthly payments, maintenance costs, and opportunity costs, I realized these assets were bleeding me dry. I wasn't building wealth. I was financing other people's wealth while staying broke myself. Here's what the wealthy know that middle-class America doesn't. Real assets put money in your pocket every month, while fake assets take money out. The financial industry has spent billions convincing you that things that take your money are actually making you rich. It's the greatest wealth transfer scam in history, and it's happening right in your driveway, your closet, and your investment accounts. In this video, I'm exposing the 5 biggest fake assets that are keeping Americans poor while making them feel successful. The 5th one will blow your mind. It's something 84% of middle-class families own, thinking it's their path to wealth, but it's actually their path to permanent financial slavery. If you're tired of working harder while getting poorer, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and comment "Real Wealth" below. Let's destroy these wealth-killing myths once and for all. Fake asset number 1, your primary residence. Here's the biggest lie in personal finance. Your home is your biggest asset. Real estate agents, mortgage companies, and even financial advisors keep pushing this myth because they profit from your confusion. But your primary residence isn't an asset. It's an expensive liability disguised as wealth building. Let me break this down with brutal honesty. Your house takes money out of your pocket every single month. Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, utilities, and HOA fees. The average American homeowner spends 35 to 40% of their income just keeping their house. Meanwhile, that money could be invested in assets that actually pay you instead of costing you. The psychological trap runs even deeper. When your house goes up in value, you feel richer, but you can't access that money without borrowing against it or selling and becoming homeless. It's fake wealth that tricks you into thinking you're building financial security while you're actually building monthly expenses that will follow you for decades. The opportunity cost is devastating. Take a typical scenario. Buying a $400,000 house with a $320,000 mortgage at 6% interest. Over 30 years, you'll pay $691,000 total, almost double the purchase price. But if you rented a similar place for $2,000 monthly and invested that mortgage payment difference, you'd have over $1.2 million in actual liquid wealth after 30 years. What makes this particularly toxic is how it traps families in financial mediocrity. They tie up their savings and down payments, commit to decades of mortgage payments, and convince themselves they're building equity, while missing out on real wealth-building opportunities. The house owns them, not the other way around. There's an ancient Babylonian teaching about a merchant who bought the largest house in the city to display his success. While he spent his profits on maintaining his grand home, his competitor lived modestly and invested his money in trade routes. Years later, the merchant with the big house was house rich but cash poor, while the modest merchant owned multiple businesses and had true financial freedom. Rent the lifestyle you want and invest the difference. Buy real estate as an investment that generates rental income, not as a place to live. Your home should provide shelter and comfort at the lowest possible cost, freeing up maximum money for wealth-building assets that actually pay you. A millionaire real estate investor shared this wisdom. I own 50 rental properties, but I rent the house I live in. My tenants pay for my lifestyle while my rental income builds my wealth. People think I'm crazy for renting, but I'm the only one getting richer every month while they're all making mortgage payments. The wealthy understand that where you live and how you build wealth are completely separate decisions. Fake asset number 2, expensive cars and vehicles. This one hurts because Americans have been programmed to see cars as symbols of success, status, and financial achievement. We finance $50,000 trucks and $70,000 SUVs, thinking we're investing in reliable transportation or buying something that holds value. But vehicles are wealth destroyers that get more expensive every year while masquerading as necessary assets. Here's the mathematical reality that car dealerships don't want you to calculate. The average American car payment is now $750 monthly for new vehicles and $550 for used. Over 6 years, that's $54,000 for a new car loan. But you're not just losing the payments. You're losing the compound growth that money could have generated if invested instead of spent on a depreciating asset. The total cost of vehicle ownership is staggering when you include insurance, gas, maintenance, registration, and depreciation. AAA estimates it costs $12,000 annually to own a new vehicle. But here's the wealth killer. If you invested that $12,000 annually in index funds returning 8%, you'd have $1.4 million after 30 years instead of a worthless 30-year-old car. The status trap makes this even more destructive. People upgrade vehicles to look successful while destroying their chances of actually becoming successful. They're financing an image that prevents them from building the wealth that would make the image real. It's like borrowing money to buy a costume from someone who has money. What's particularly insidious is how the auto industry has normalized perpetual car payments. They promote leasing and 84-month loans to keep monthly payments affordable, while ensuring you never stop paying. You become a permanent subscriber to car payments, transferring wealth to auto manufacturers and banks while thinking you're building assets. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful men, walked everywhere in Rome when possible and used the simplest transportation when necessary. He understood that true power came from controlling resources, not displaying them. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me how much money people spend trying to look like they have money. Buy reliable used cars with cash and drive them until they die." A 3 to 4-year-old Honda Civic or Toyota Camry provides the same transportation as a new luxury vehicle, but costs 60% less. Take the money you're not spending on car payments and invest it in assets that appreciate instead of depreciate. A self-made entrepreneur told me, "I drove a 12-year-old Honda while building my first $1 million. Friends thought I was cheap, but I was actually being strategic. Every dollar not spent on car payments was a dollar working for my financial freedom. Now I can afford any car, but I still drive modestly because I learned that wealth comes from what you don't buy, not what you do buy. The wealthy drive cars. Cars don't drive the wealthy into debt." Are you starting to see how these assets are actually wealth traps? Comment with the number 2 if you're currently making payments on something that's losing value while you think it's building wealth. Fake asset number 3, designer clothes and luxury items. This fake asset is particularly devastating because it targets our deepest psychological needs: belonging, status, and self-worth. The luxury goods industry has convinced millions of Americans that expensive clothes, watches, handbags, and accessories are investments in themselves that build personal brand value and career success. But these items are pure wealth destruction disguised as self-improvement. Here's the brutal math on luxury consumption. The average American spends $1,800 annually on clothing, but those chasing status spend $5,000 to $15,000 yearly on designer items. A $3,000 handbag worn twice monthly costs $125 per use in the first year and becomes worthless after a few seasons. Meanwhile, that same $3,000 invested annually becomes $361,000 over 30 years at 8% returns. The psychological manipulation runs incredibly deep. Luxury brands spend billions on advertising that associates their products with success, confidence, and social acceptance. They create artificial scarcity through limited releases and waiting lists, making people feel special for paying premium prices for mass-produced items. You're paying thousands extra for a logo that makes the company rich while keeping you poor. What makes this particularly toxic is how it scales with income. People making $75,000 might buy a $500 designer item they can't afford, while people making under $50,000 buy $2,000 items they think they can afford. In both cases, they're trading future wealth for temporary status, creating a lifestyle that requires constant income to maintain while building zero long-term assets. The social media amplification makes this worse than ever. Instagram and TikTok create pressure to constantly showcase new luxury items, turning fashion into a performance that requires ongoing investment. People buy expensive clothes not because they need them, but because they need content to prove their lifestyle to people they don't even know. The resale value myth adds another layer of deception. Luxury brands promote their items as investment pieces that hold value, but most designer items lose 50 to 80% of their value immediately after purchase. A $5,000 designer dress might resell for $1,000 if you're lucky, while the same $5,000 in index funds would be worth $7,200 after just 5 years. There's a story from ancient Greece about a philosopher who owned only one cloak, but was respected throughout Athens for his wisdom and character. When asked why he didn't dress more impressively, he replied, "I prefer to be impressive through my thoughts and actions rather than my appearance. Those who judge me by my clothes aren't worth impressing, and those worth impressing judge me by my character." His simple lifestyle allowed him to focus his resources on learning and teaching, creating a lasting influence that outlived all the fashionable people of his time. Buy quality basics that last years, not trendy items that last seasons. Shop secondhand for any luxury items you want, paying 20% of retail for 90% of the status. Take the money you're not spending on designer labels and invest it in assets that appreciate instead of depreciate. A successful executive shared her transformation. "I used to spend $20,000 annually on designer clothes and accessories, thinking it was necessary for my career. When I calculated that this habit would cost me $2.4 million in retirement wealth, I completely changed my approach. I now buy quality basics and invest the difference." Ironically, my career advanced faster when I focused on performance instead of appearance, and my bank account finally started growing. The reality is that true success creates the ability to buy luxury items, while buying luxury items prevents true success. Fake asset number 4. Collectibles and hobby investments. This category is emotionally devastating because it combines passion with poor financial decisions. Americans pour billions into collectibles. Sports cards, vintage cars, wine, watches, coins, and memorabilia, believing they're building valuable collections that will appreciate over time. But most collectibles are terrible investments that provide emotional satisfaction while destroying a financial future. The fundamental problem with collectibles is that they're purely speculative assets with no underlying income generation. A vintage baseball card doesn't pay dividends, a classic car doesn't generate rental income, and a painting doesn't produce cash flow. Their value depends entirely on finding someone willing to pay more than you did, which is the definition of speculation, not investment. The transaction costs make wealth building nearly impossible. Buying collectibles often involves dealer markups of 20 to 50%, authentication fees, insurance, storage costs, and selling commissions. A $10,000 collectible might cost $12,000 to acquire and $8,000 to sell, requiring 50% appreciation just to break even. Meanwhile, broad market index funds have historically returned 10% annually with minimal traction costs. The expertise trap creates another layer of wealth destruction. People think they're smart collectors who can spot undervalued items, but they're competing against professional dealers, auction houses, and institutional collectors with decades of experience and insider knowledge. It's like thinking you can beat professional poker players because you won at your neighborhood game. The emotional attachment makes rational decision-making impossible. People hold on to losing collectibles because they love them, hoping they'll eventually appreciate, while ignoring opportunity costs. They become emotionally invested in being right about their purchases instead of being practical about their wealth building. Storage and maintenance costs compound the wealth destruction. Classic cars need climate-controlled garages, insurance, and regular maintenance, even when not driven. Art requires proper climate control and security. Wine needs perfect storage conditions. These ongoing costs eat away at any potential appreciation while tying up capital that could be growing in productive investments. The liquidity problem creates additional financial stress. When you need money quickly, selling collectibles takes time, expertise, and often results in fire sale prices. Real assets like index funds can be sold instantly at market value, providing financial flexibility that collectibles can't match. King Solomon wrote about those who collected treasures that moth and rust could destroy, while wise people invested in things that grew and multiplied over time. He observed that beautiful objects brought temporary pleasure, but productive assets brought lasting prosperity. The lesson: invest in businesses that create value, not objects that sit and hope to appreciate. If you love collectibles, set aside a small percentage of your wealth for hobby purchases, but treat them as entertainment expenses, not investments. Put the majority of your money into boring index funds that actually build wealth while you enjoy your hobbies guilt-free. A reformed collector shared his expensive lesson. I spent 15 years and $180,000 building a vintage watch collection, thinking I was investing in appreciating assets. When I finally sold everything, I recovered $95,000 after fees and commissions. If I'd put that money in index funds instead, I'd have had $520,000. I learned that emotional satisfaction and financial growth are two different things. Now I rent or borrow items I want to enjoy temporarily and invest my money in assets that actually work for me. The wealthy understand that collections are consumption, not investment, and they budget accordingly. Fake asset number 5, your 401k and traditional retirement accounts. This one will be controversial because you've been told your entire career that 401k contributions are the foundation of wealth building. But for most Americans, these tax-deferred accounts are actually wealth destruction vehicles that trap your money in high-fee, low-return investments while creating future tax obligations that could bankrupt your retirement. Here's what they don't tell you about 401k plans. The average plan charges 1 to 2% annually in hidden fees through expensive mutual funds, administrative costs, and advisor fees. Over 30 years, these fees can consume 30 to 40% of your total returns. A $100,000 401k, growing at 7% annually, becomes $761,000 after 30 years, but fees reduce that to $450,000. You're paying $310,000 in fees for the privilege of saving for retirement. The tax deferral trap is even worse than the fee problem. You're trading today's known tax rates for tomorrow's unknown tax rates. And the government is incentivizing this because they expect future rates to be higher. When you retire, every dollar you withdraw is taxed as ordinary income at potentially much higher rates than you're paying today. You're not avoiding taxes, you're potentially increasing them. The contribution limits create artificial scarcity that prevents real wealth building. The 2025 401k limit is $23,000 annually, which sounds like a lot until you realize that's only $1,916 monthly. If you're serious about building wealth, you need to invest much more than that. But 401k rules prevent it while tricking you into thinking you're maximizing your retirement savings. The lack of control destroys wealth building flexibility. Your 401k forces you to choose from a limited menu of expensive mutual funds selected by your employer and their consultants. You can't invest in individual stocks, real estate, or alternative investments that might better serve your wealth-building goals. You're trapped in whatever options they provide, regardless of quality or cost. The early withdrawal penalties create a wealth prison that can destroy financial flexibility. Need money before 59.5? Pay 10% penalties plus taxes on withdrawals. This forces people to take expensive loans or go into debt for emergencies instead of accessing their own money, creating additional financial stress and wealth destruction. The required minimum distributions, RMDs, starting at age 73, force you to withdraw money and pay taxes whether you need the income or not. The government dictates when and how much you must withdraw from your own retirement accounts, potentially pushing you into higher tax brackets and forcing you to liquidate investments at inopportune times. There's a biblical parable about a man who buried his talent in the ground to keep it safe, thinking he was being responsible with his master's money. When the master returned, he was angry that the servant had chosen safety over growth, security over opportunity. The master gave the buried talent to those who had multiplied theirs, teaching that excessive caution can be more dangerous than reasonable risk. Contribute only enough to get any company match, then invest additional retirement money in Roth IRAs and taxable investment accounts. This gives you more control, better investment options, tax diversification, and access to your money when needed. Build wealth outside the 401k system that limits your growth potential. A financial planner who left the industry revealed, "I spent 20 years convincing people that maxing out their 401k was smart, but I was really helping employers and fund companies get rich while keeping workers financially dependent. When I calculated the true costs of fees, taxes, and restrictions, I realized I was destroying the very wealth I was supposed to be building." The people who built the most wealth ignored the conventional retirement advice and invested on their own terms. The 401k system was designed to transfer wealth from workers to financial institutions while creating the illusion of retirement security. What's your biggest money realization from this video? Comment fake assets if you're ready to stop confusing expenses with investments and start building real wealth. Now you see the 5 biggest fake assets that keep Americans trapped in financial mediocrity while feeling like they're building wealth. These aren't just poor choices. They're systematic wealth transfer schemes designed to make you feel successful while keeping you financially dependent on the very institutions that profit from your confusion. Here's your wealth-building reality check. Start this week by calculating how much these fake assets are really costing you. Add up your mortgage payment, car payments, designer purchases, collectible investments, and 401k fees. That total represents money that could be building real wealth instead of maintaining lifestyle inflation. Which fake asset hit closest to home? Comment "Wealth Awakening" and tell me which one you're going to eliminate first. Your honest assessment might inspire someone else to stop confusing assets with liabilities. If this video shattered some financial myths you've been living by, smash that like button and share it with anyone who thinks they're building wealth but might be building debt. Subscribe and hit the bell because I'm exposing more wealth-building truths that the financial industry doesn't want you to know. Next week, I'm revealing the exact investments that actually make ordinary people rich. The simple strategies they don't teach in schools or sell in banks. Remember, real assets put money in your pocket every month, while fake assets take money out. The difference between the wealthy and everyone else isn't income, it's recognizing which is which. Stop feeding the wealth transfer machine and start building assets that actually work for you instead of against you.